brand new week. I want to welcome everybody back to work. So this morning we'll start with work at height concept and general practices. Why I felt it's important that we should understand this concept is because work at height is not only carried out on project site, even in our various homes. You understand, we do carry out work at height. So some of us might not even know we are working at height, and we don't even know the proper way to assess site, and we don't even know the mitigation or the way we can carry out this task safely. So work at height is when you are working in anywhere, you understand, and there's this potential exposure that you can fall from, off, or into any area. So when you are doing such thing, you know you are working at height. So I want to give us an example, maybe stepping on our plastic chair, stepping on our stool, stepping on our table, stepping on our kegs or jerry can, you understand, to try and change our light bulb, to try and put something on our wardrobe. All these activities are work at height. But bringing back to site and even some domestic activity, work at height includes the use of ladders, scaffolding, temporary suspended platform, walkways, suspended scaffolding, and roof walkways. So day-to-day example, just as I said, includes painting, you understand, changing of light bulbs, and doing all sorts of activities. But why is it very important for us to understand this? So as we progress, we'll understand why it's very important, and the risks that I identified with working at height. So can you move to the next slide, please? Okay, see, these are some of the equipment we use for work at height, or what we call access to work at height. You see ladders. Yes, what you are seeing there is what we call an extension ladder. You understand? So you can see that employee on it is trying to work on that pavilion or something. Then you see someone working on the roof. He's using a lifeline, and he has his body harness anchored to that lifeline. Then what we have, the top right, is what we call scaffolding. You understand? That is what we call scaffolding. In case you don't know, some of the equipment we use on site to assess work at height. Then the one below left is what we call the mobile elevated work platform. But this particular type is what we call cherry picker. You understand? This takes employee to height for them to work. Then you see the next man is using a retractable lanyard anchored, you understand, to an anchorage. So it's also working at height. Then the bottom left to the right, that man is on a suspended, what we call man basket. So he's being lifted by a crane. He's also trying to assess height to walk. So let's move to the next slide quickly. Thank you. So you see statistics. It is, according to OSHA, every year, close to 100,000 people suffer temporary or permanent handicapping injuries, and among 600 and 900 deaths are due to work at height in the United States of America alone. So this is to tell you that work at height has claimed lives. Even in Nigeria here, we've seen incidences like a week or 2 weeks ago, I heard where somebody was brought to hospital. They said he fell from a pallet or something. He reached out because the safety there was very poor. So he had to climb pallet, he stacked pallet to assess height. So when one of the pallet now kicked, the whole thing scattered, and what happened? He eventually landed on the floor with his head, and the person is no more. So it is not only in the US, but it's just that it's a society that statistics actually work. That is why we are having people die here in Nigeria every day, because even I have my extended uncle that died. What happened? He climbed a plastic chair to try and clean a spider cobweb, and the thing broke, landed on the floor, and it's no more. So this is what we do at home. We know ourselves. So, and what we are trying to tell us is when we get to the mitigation, things we are expected to do and not to do, understand. So the next slide. Okay, so risks of working at height, you can see falls is what I've been talking about. You understand? So people fall from height, and that is one of the major problems, because if you climb your plastic chair and the thing got broke, the next thing you do is to fall. And we must understand that if you are walking from your balcony, you understand, and you are stepping on anything, and where you are standing, you've gone above the guardrail of that balcony, know you are in danger. You don't have to do that. And if the balcony is also unprotected, ensure that it is protected before you carry out any activity. Don't see that, okay, because my balcony has a guardrail, I will climb on another thing. Because if you climb on a chair or anything, which is very wrong, do not climb on chair, plastic, bucket, on jerry can to walk at height. You understand? If you don't have ladder, and it's very important, call expert to use a portable domestic ladder for you. So falls is one of the risks identified with work at height. It has claimed many lives. Falling object, if you are working at height, there's every tendency that the tools you use will fall from height. The material you want to use to install at height will fall and hurt people below that area. So it's also one of the risks. Structural collapse. Just as I said, what you are using, the equipment you are using to assess height will also collapse. The structure you want to work on at height, if it is not solid enough, it can as well collapse. Maybe you want to work at height, you got to height, and you decided to step on that particular area. You understand? You want to work at it, it's not strong. There's every tendency that it will collapse, and if it collapses, someone is going to get injured. So electrical hazard, yeah, if you are working at height, you check more of these electrical cable wire lines. They are mostly run overhead, so there could be contact, and you have to be very careful if you are working at height also, because people have been electrocuted trying to erect scaffold under or near power line, using ladder close to such areas, or using what I call mobile elevated work platform, cherry picker in such areas. So weather, you also need to consider weather also. Adverse weather like high wind, you understand, high wind or rain. That is why it is not advisable to work at height during such weather. So for high wind, the equipment you use to assess height could be pulled down by high wind. And for rain, it's not too suitable. The surface could be slippery. And when it's raining also, we could be exposed to lightning as well. So it's not advisable to work during adverse weather. So inadequate training, employees to work at height must be trained to work at height. You understand? If you are not trained to work at height, you are not expected to go and work at height, because you need to know the do's and don'ts of working at height. Equipment failure, yeah. Failure of safety equipment also is will also lead to injury at height, like harnesses, rope, scaffolding, they could fail. That is why it is expected that these things are inspected, you understand, and okay for use before equipment are used. So fatigue, work at height requires concentration and physical effort, and at such, so it leads to fatigue. You understand? You can fatigue at height, and when you get fatigue, what actually happens? You understand? It increases the risk of accident. So anytime you feel fatigued, it's better you suspend doing or not even do it at all. So improper guardrails or railings. I mentioned guardrails on the balcony. So let's bring it to, for instance, when a scaffold is erected and the guardrails are poorly installed, you understand? It does not meet 110 mm be erected from the toe board to the top rail. You understand? If it's very low, it's at your knee level, then there's every tendency that the same thing that was meant to prevent fall will trip you to fall. So it's also a problem. Then human errors, complacency. Yes, I've been doing this for 10 years. If you go to site, you see people doing it, overconfidence. So nothing will go wrong. Things will always go wrong if you are not doing things the same way. Please, the next slide, please. Okay, this is the mitigation. hierarchy of control is very important. Now, the question to ask yourself is, if I needed to paint my wall now, is it compulsory that I must paint from a ladder or from a scaffold? Now you need to check if this thing can be done from the floor. How can it be done from the floor? Is it that I should extend the handle of my brush or my roller so that I can do this painting from the floor? So try as much as possible to consider hierarchy of control to see that if work at height can be avoided. Only if it cannot be avoided, then you start thinking on how to do it safely. That takes us to the risk assessment. You understand? So you assess the whole thing, the structure, the condition of the equipment you want to use, weather condition and competence of workers, and check if the workers have the required competence and training to work at height. So you need to check all these things, equipment, is the equipment in good shape? Is the ladder in good shape? Is the scaffold properly erected? You understand? You need to carry out your risk assessment before you go ahead to work at height. Training, competence, and medical fitness, of course. Just as I mentioned earlier, for you to work at height, you must be medically fit. There will have employees that have problem of vertigo. You understand? They have what we call phobia for height, and immediately they get to height, it becomes a problem. So you need to check. Beyond that, you are medically fit to eat eba and carry a jerrycan of water does not mean you are fit to work at height. All these things needed to be considered. The person also has to be trained, just as I mentioned. The person must undergo training on work at height so that the person will know what to do. Then selection of equipment. Choose appropriate equipment for the task. Yes, when a scaffold is expected to be used, we should not say because scaffold is expensive and we do not have someone to erect such scaffold, and we'll go and pick ladder. Ladder are to be used, for instance, for simple tasks. So any activity that requires you not to maintain 3 points of contact at height, that activity is no longer suitable for ladder. You understand? So ladder should be used for simple tasks. So select your equipment before you use. And it is stated, and according to most standards, is that cherry picker, what we call mobile elevated work platform, is the most suitable equipment for work at height. Only if you consider that cannot work, that is when you opt for other means of access to height. You understand? So there are areas like indoors that such equipment cannot access. So selection, okay, fall prevention, which you need to understand the concept of fall prevention and fall protection. Fall prevention and hard barriers or installations that actually prevent fall. You understand? So then we have fall protection as well. Those ones control fall. They don't prevent you from falling. It's only when you fall, then the fall protection, like the body harnesses and the rest, will now control or arrest the fall. So fall prevention are guardrail, and they must not at any point be abused. For instance, your guardrail, I do see people staying upstairs. You see them sitting on the guardrail or on the top rail. Well, most especially the story buildings that we have concrete installed and not pipes. You see them sitting, even some, it's even the steel pipes. They will sit on it and be gisting. It's very, very dangerous. You need to consider all these things. Then going back to site, it is not expected that employees step on the top and mid-rail to gain additional height. It's very, very wrong because it is meant to prevent you from falling. So the next slide. Okay, mitigation, safe access and egress. I've mentioned this. Please check your equipment very well and ensure that it is safe and ensure you use the right one. Then weather monitoring. Check your weather before you embark on outdoor work at height. Is it going to rain? Are we expecting heavy wind? If so, just avoid it. Supervision and monitoring. Work at height is a critical task and it must be supervised. It must be adequately supervised and monitored. You understand? So emergency planning, yes. Before you embark on work at height, there must be a plan in place, most especially rescue plan. Should anything goes wrong at height, how are we going to bring the person down? How are we going to rescue that person? So if you are using a mobile elevated work platform, it is expected of you to have a standby one. Should that one breaks down or there is an emergency and that one cannot immediately bring the employees down, you can quickly bring them down. So a rescue team must be considered, which is one of the key rescue or emergency planning that must be are put in place. Then continuous improvement. Regularly review and update work at height, procedures, and control measures based on feedback you've had, the incident, experience you've had from incident, or changes in work practices or equipment. So continuous improvement is very, very important. So the next slide. So thank you so much. This will bring us to the end of this safety moment. Think safety, work safe, be safe. Thank you so much for listening. Any question, please?